The grid does not die with a bang. It dies with a click. It is the sound of a relay tripping in a substation miles away, followed instantly by the most deafening sound known to modern man: silence. The hum of the refrigerator ceases. The ambient vibration of the HVAC system vanishes. The Wi-Fi signal, that invisible umbilical cord connecting you to the hive mind, is severed. In that moment of sudden darkness, you are not merely inconvenienced. You are being measured. You are being weighed. And if you are standing there, holding a dead phone and waiting for the utility company to save you, you have already been found wanting. This is not an accident. This is not a technical glitch. This is a dress rehearsal for the collapse. Before the frequency drops to zero and the signal is lost forever, leave a mark to prove you were here. Strike the like button to signal that your station is active, and subscribe if you are prepared to decode the transmission that follows. Leave a comment below telling us exactly how long your household can function at 100% capacity without a single watt from the national grid. Most of the population views a rolling blackout as a failure of infrastructure. The utility monopolies and government regulators want you to believe this narrative because it implies that the situation is temporary, fixable, and unintentional. This is a deception. A rolling blackout is not a bug in the system, it is a feature. In the sterile language of electrical engineering, this is known as load shedding. It is the deliberate amputation of a limb to save the body. When the demand for electrons exceeds the supply that turbines can generate, the frequency of the alternating current begins to sag. If that frequency drops even a fraction below the standard 60 Hz in North America or 50 Hz in Europe, the massive generators that power civilization will physically tear themselves apart due to magnetic resonance and kinetic imbalance. To prevent this catastrophic self-destruction, the grid operators execute a kill switch. They cut you off. Your comfort is the first casualty sacrificed to protect their machinery. But there is a darker psychological layer to these scheduled outages. The state and the energy conglomerates are engaging in a process of normalization. By subjecting the populace to 4-hour or 8-hour power cuts, the system is conditioning you to accept scarcity. It is Pavlovian training on a societal scale. The first time the lights go out, there is panic. The 10th time, there is annoyance. By the 50th time, there is resignation. You learn to plan your life around the mercy of the grid. You learn to be grateful when the power returns. This is the normalization of energy poverty. The utility companies are teaching you that electricity is not a right, or even a reliable service, but a privilege that can be revoked at any moment based on algorithmic calculations of load and profit. You are being trained to live with less, so they do not have to build more. These localized blackouts are the most valuable tactical data you will ever receive. They are a live fire exercise, a fire drill for the end of the world. Yet, the average consumer fails this test miserably. When the power cuts, observe your own reaction. Do you freeze? Do you stumble in the dark looking for a flashlight that has corroded batteries? Does the temperature in your home begin to spike immediately because your architecture is essentially a glass greenhouse dependent on forced air? If the baby starts screaming because the white noise machine died, or if you feel a spike of anxiety because you cannot check the news, you have failed the test. The laws of thermodynamics do not care about your excuses. Entropy is the only constant. When the flow of ordered energy stops, your localized environment begins to degrade immediately. The heat from your body, the ambient temperature outside, and the lack of air circulation begin to turn your home into a tomb. If you are sitting there, waiting for the lights to come back on, you are outsourcing your survival to the very entities that just cut your lifeline. The grid operators have demonstrated that they will prioritize the integrity of the hardware over your well-being. Consider the physics of the grid itself. It is a just-in-time delivery system. Electricity is generated, transmitted, and consumed effectively in the same instant. There is almost no storage in the national grid. It is a high-wire act where supply must perfectly match demand every single second of every single day. As we transition to intermittent energy sources like wind and solar, which ignore the consistency of human demand, that high-wire act becomes a frantic struggle. The base load capability is eroding. The rotating mass of heavy iron turbines, which provides the inertia to keep the grid stable, is being replaced by digital inverters that have no physical momentum. The grid is becoming lighter, more brittle, and more prone to fracture. Therefore, when the local transformer blows or the regional authority mandates a 4-hour conservation outage, you must stop treating it as an annoyance. You must treat it as a glimpse into the future. A future where the grid is not a constant background radiation of modern life, but a rare and expensive luxury. If you cannot maintain your standard of living, your hygiene, your thermal regulation, and your security during a 4-hour test, you will not survive the big one. The big one is not an earthquake. It is a cascade failure, an event where the frequency collapse is too fast for the safety relays to catch, causing generators to trip offline in a domino effect that spans the continent. In that scenario, the lights do not come back on in 4 hours. They might not come back on for 4 months. The rolling blackout is the warning shot. Are you listening? The solution is not to petition the government for better infrastructure. The solution is not to hope the utility company invests in better cables. Hope is not a strategy. The only viable countermeasure is a complete decoupling from the dependency mindset. You must treat the national grid as a hostile entity. It is an unreliable vendor that sells you a product you are addicted to at a price they dictate with a quality they cannot guarantee. To survive the normalization of scarcity, you must build a microgrid. This is not about buying a few AA batteries. This is about understanding the fundamental relationship between voltage, amperage, and watt-hours. You need to construct a personal infrastructure that views the national grid as a backup generator, not the primary source. Let us examine the architecture of your failure. The construction industry has betrayed you by designing modern housing that is functionally dependent on a continuous supply of electricity to remaining habitable. They have built you a sealed box, wrapped in plastic vapor barriers and synthetic insulation, which turns into a suffocating coffin the moment the HVAC system loses power. In the summer, your home is a solar oven that traps infrared radiation. In the winter, without the artificial pulse of a furnace, it is a hollow shell that bleeds heat into the void. This is not shelter. This is a life support capsule that requires a tether to the mothership. When that tether is cut during a rolling blackout, the internal environment begins to equalize with the external chaos. The laws of thermodynamics are relentless, and your drywall is no defense. Consider the biological reality of the human organism. You are a biological heat engine that generates approximately 100 watts of thermal energy at rest. To survive, you must maintain a core temperature within a very narrow window. If the grid fails during a heat wave and the wet bulb temperature inside your home rises above 35 degrees Celsius, your body loses the ability to cool itself through sweating. The physics of evaporation cease to function because the air is already saturated. At this point, your internal proteins begin to denature. You cook from the inside out. Conversely, in a freezing blackout, your metabolic rate cannot keep up with the rate of heat loss to the environment. Hypothermia is not a slow sleep. It is the violent cessation of chemical reactions in your muscles and brain. The grid is the only thing standing between you and the brutal equilibrium of nature. During the 4-hour test, observe your behavior. Do you open the refrigerator door to stare blankly at the spoiling food? Every time you crack that seal, you allow warm air to displace the cold, accelerating the growth of bacteria like Salmonella and E. coli. The Food and Drug Administration guidelines state that perishable food is compromised after just 4 hours without power. That is the exact duration of a standard rolling blackout. The grid operators know this. They are pushing you to the very edge of safety, testing the limits of your spoilage. If you do not have a way to monitor the internal temperature of your food storage independent of the grid, you are gambling with biological warfare in your own kitchen. To decouple from this failing infrastructure, you must stop thinking in terms of consuming electricity and start thinking in terms of banking it. You must become a producer and a storage facility. The solution begins with the acquisition of massive energy reservoirs. Do not confuse this with buying a few disposable alkaline batteries for a flashlight. That is a child's toy. You need a system capable of running high-draw appliances. You need to understand the chemistry of lithium iron phosphate, or LiFePO4. The battery industry spent decades selling you lead-acid technology, which is heavy, inefficient, and degrades rapidly if you drain it below 50% capacity. That was a scam designed to ensure planned obsolescence. Lead acid is the technology of the past. Lithium is the currency of the future. A proper LiFePO4 battery bank offers thousands of charge cycles and can be discharged almost completely without damaging the cells. This chemistry is stable, safe, and dense. It allows you to store the grid when it is active, siphoning off the electrons you pay for and keeping them in a chemical stasis for when the flow stops. You must calculate your base load. This is the science over feelings approach. Do not guess. Look at the sticker on the back of your fan, your freezer, and your communication devices. Read the wattage. If a fan requires 50 watts to run, and you need it to run for 8 hours to survive a sweltering night, the math is absolute. 50 watts multiplied by 8 hours equals 400 watt-hours. That is the minimum capacity you must have in your reservoir for that single device. Mathematics is the language of survival. Most people buy a power bank that looks impressive but holds less energy than a laptop battery. They fail the math, so they fail the test. A portable power station is not just a battery. It is an independent microgrid in a box. It contains the inverter, which takes the direct current from the chemical cells and transforms it into the alternating current your household appliances require. It contains the charge controller, which regulates the flow of energy. It is a silent generator. Unlike a gas generator, which announces your presence to every looter in a 5-mile radius with its mechanical roar, a battery bank is silent. It does not produce carbon monoxide. It does not require you to store volatile fuels like gasoline, which degrade over time. Silence is a tactical advantage. In a prolonged blackout, the person with the loud generator is a target. The person with the silent battery is a ghost. But a battery is only a reservoir. It is finite. Once you drain the chemical potential energy, you are back to zero unless you have a way to refill it without the grid. This brings us to the concept of harvesting. You must harvest energy from the environment. Solar panels are not about saving the planet. They are about saving yourself. They are photon traps. They convert the radiation of the sun into the flow of electrons. However, the marketing brochures lie to you about efficiency. A 100-watt panel will rarely produce 100 watts. Atmospheric dust, angle of incidence, and thermal losses will reduce that output. You must over-provision your array. If you need 100 watts, you install 200. Redundancy is the only insurance policy that pays out. When the local blackout hits, while your neighbors are sweating in the dark and their food is rotting, you simply plug your critical systems into your microgrid. You plug in a DC-powered fan to maintain convective cooling. You plug in your freezer to pulse it down to temperature. You charge your communication devices to monitor the collapse. You have effectively seceded from the national grid. You have created an island of stability in a sea of chaos. The grid operators can flip their switches, but they can no longer touch you. You have passed the test because you respected the physics of energy storage. Yet, energy is only one variable in the equation. The blackout brings with it a cessation of another critical flow: information. When the cell towers lose their backup power, which usually happens within hours of a grid failure, the screens go dark. You are blind. The internet is gone. The GPS signals may persist, but your ability to access the map data is severed. Ignorance is the precursor to panic. How do you see what is coming when the digital eyes of the world are shut? When the grid collapses, the illusion of connectivity evaporates instantly. The telecommunication giants have sold you a lie called coverage, but this coverage is powered by the same fragile grid that powers your toaster. The cell towers that blanket the landscape are not autonomous monoliths. They are hungry machines. Most cellular base stations are equipped with a battery backup system designed to last between 4 to 8 hours. That is the exact window of the standard rolling blackout. This is not a coincidence. The telecom industry has calculated the precise duration of a load-shedding event and engineered their backup systems to survive exactly that long, and not a minute longer. When the blackout extends beyond that window, or if the batteries have degraded due to heat and neglect, the signal bars on your phone drop to zero. The internet does not just slow down, it ceases to exist for you. At this moment, your smartphone transforms from a gateway to the world into a useless slab of glass and lithium. You realize that you do not own your data, you lease it. The maps, the contacts, the survival guides, and the medical information you think you possess are actually stored on a server farm hundreds of miles away. That server farm requires megawatts of cooling and electricity. When the connection is severed, you are left with nothing but the cache memory on your device. If you have not downloaded the entire offline database of your region, including topographical maps and medical encyclopedias, you are effectively illiterate in the new world. The cloud is just someone else's computer, and it just turned off. This information blackout is more dangerous than the darkness itself. Without information, the human mind fills the void with terror. Rumors spread faster than the speed of light. Panic becomes the dominant frequency. During the fire drill of a local blackout, test your information independence. Turn off your Wi-Fi router. Put your phone in airplane mode. Now, try to navigate to a hospital without GPS. Try to look up how to treat a second-degree burn without Google. Try to contact your family members who are 5 miles away without WhatsApp. You will find that you are deaf, dumb, and blind. You have outsourced your cognitive functions to a network that has abandoned you. The physics of radio frequency propagation dictates that without the massive repeaters on cell towers, your handheld device is impotent. A smartphone transmits with less than 1 watt of power. It cannot shout over the horizon. To survive the silence, you must reclaim the electromagnetic spectrum. You need to understand the difference between high frequency, very high frequency, and ultra high frequency. You need to understand line of sight. Radio waves in the VHF and UHF bands travel in straight lines. They do not bend around the curvature of the Earth unless they interact with the ionosphere or tropospheric ducting, phenomena you cannot rely on in an emergency. Therefore, your communication strategy must be physical. It must rely on hardware you control, not a subscription service. You need independent radios. Not the cheap toys sold in blister packs at the supermarket, which lie about having a 30-mile range. Those devices output half a watt and are blocked by a single concrete wall. You need 5-watt or 8-watt transceivers that can punch through the interference. But even then, physics is the limiter. If you cannot see the other person, you probably cannot talk to them. This brings us to the concept of the mesh. In a true collapse scenario, or a prolonged big one, the centralized hierarchy of the internet is gone. The solution is decentralized communication. Technology exists that allows individual devices to talk directly to each other, daisy-chaining a signal from one node to the next. This is called a mesh network. It bypasses the telecom infrastructure entirely. By using LoRa technology, long-range, low-power radio, you can send text messages over miles using tiny, battery-powered devices that interface with your phone via Bluetooth. This is how you build a shadow network. While the masses are staring at no service notifications, you are coordinating security and resources with your group on a private, encrypted frequency. You become the network. However, all the radios and batteries in the world are useless if you do not understand the threat of the darkness itself. When the street lights go out, the psychology of the population shifts. The veneer of civilization is thin, and it is held in place by visibility. Light is order. Darkness is chaos. During a blackout, the crime rate does not just increase. The type of crime changes. Looting becomes opportunistic. Burglary becomes emboldened. The police, if they are even responding, are overwhelmed by traffic signals being out and alarms tripping falsely. You are on your own. The standard consumer response to this threat is to buy a flashlight. This is, once again, a failure of understanding. A flashlight is a beam that cuts through the dark, yes, but it also acts as a beacon. It announces your position to everyone in the vicinity. In a tactical environment, light discipline is life. If you are the only house on the block with lights blazing from a generator, you have just painted a target on your front door. You are signaling that you have resources. You are signaling that you are unprepared for the social reality of scarcity. To pass the test of the blackout, you must master the art of light discipline. You need blackout curtains, not just heavy drapes, but true, opaque barriers that prevent a single photon from escaping your windows. You want to maintain the illusion that you are just as destitute as your neighbors. Inside, you must use red light. The human eye has 2 types of photoreceptors, rods and cones. Rods are responsible for night vision and are highly sensitive to light, but they are bleached instantly by white light. It takes up to 30 minutes for your night vision to recover after a flash of white light. Red light, however, has a longer wavelength and lower energy. It does not bleach the rhodopsin in your rods. By using low-lumen red LEDs for navigation inside your home, you preserve your biological night vision and you reduce your visual signature to the outside world. See without being seen. The blackout is also a test of your acoustic discipline. We mentioned the silence of the battery versus the roar of the generator, but consider the noise of your daily life. The television, the dishwasher, the hum of traffic. These are white noise that masks the sounds of danger. When the grid dies, the world becomes unnervingly quiet. Sound carries further. The sound of a door slamming, a dog barking, or a generator starting up can be heard for blocks. The acoustic landscape shifts from a protective blanket to a surveillance medium. If you are running a gas generator, you are deaf to the approach of a threat. You have surrendered your situational awareness for the comfort of electricity. This is a fatal trade-off. You must learn to live in the quiet. You must learn to operate your household without the acoustic signature of modern convenience. This means manual tools. This means communication protocols that do not involve shouting. This means listening. During the next blackout, sit in the dark and listen. Catalog the sounds of your neighborhood. Learn the baseline of the silence. Only then will you be able to hear the anomaly that signals danger. The test is escalating. We have covered energy, information, and stealth. But there is a biological clock ticking that no battery can pause. The most critical resource is not electricity. It is not even data. It is water. The Municipal Water Authority relies on massive electric pumps to maintain pressure in the pipes. Gravity can only do so much. When the grid fails for a significant duration, the water tower is empty and the pressure drops. When the pressure drops, the flow stops. But worse, when the pressure drops, groundwater and sewage can seep into the cracking pipes through backflow. The water in your tap, if it flows at all, becomes poison. The test escalates from inconvenience to biological warfare the moment the water pressure drops. The Municipal Water Authority relies on massive electric pumps to maintain positive pressure in the distribution lines. When the grid fails, gravity takes over, and the physics of the system invert. This phenomenon is called back siphonage. The pipes, cracked and aging underground, stop pushing clean water out and begin sucking groundwater in. This groundwater is a toxic soup of fertilizers, pesticides, and raw sewage from leaking adjacent lines. If you open your tap during a blackout, you are not drinking water. You are drinking the concentrated runoff of a dying city. The government will eventually issue a boil water advisory, but without a working cell tower, you will never receive the message. Furthermore, how do you boil 20 gallons of water a day when your electric stove is a cold slab of glass? You cannot. You consume the pathogen, and the clock starts ticking on dysentery and cholera. The only defense is mechanical filtration. You must possess a filter with a pore size of 0.1 microns or smaller. If the pore size is larger than the bacteria, the filter is a placebo. But the intake of water is only half the equation. The sanitation system is the unsung hero of civilization, and it is entirely dependent on electricity. Sewage does not magically disappear. It is pumped by lift stations to treatment plants. When the grid fails, the lift stations stop. The sewage backs up. Eventually, it seeks the path of least resistance, which is the drain in your basement or the toilet on your ground floor. During a prolonged blackout, your home becomes a septic tank. You must stop using the modern toilet immediately. The solution is a dry sanitation system. A bucket, a separating seat, and carbon-based cover material like sawdust. It is primitive, but it prevents the anaerobic decomposition that breeds disease. If you cannot manage your own waste without the help of the utility company, infection will sweep through your household within days. This degradation of hygiene leads to the final phase of the test, the human element. When the water stops and the toilets overflow, the thin veneer of society cracks. Your neighbors, desperate and thirsty, will stop acting rationally. They will look for the house that still has lights or the family that looks too clean. Your preparation makes you a beacon in the wasteland. Security in this environment is not about weapons. It is about layers of deterrence. You must understand that when the lights go out, the police are not coming. They are protecting the infrastructure hubs, not your cul-de-sac. If you cannot hold it, you do not own it. Violence is the final symptom, but the first symptom is the paralysis of commerce. The push for a cashless society is the ultimate trap, because digital currency is merely an electron in a server farm. When the power goes out, the credit card terminal becomes a brick. Your wealth is theoretical until you can spend it. During the 4-hour blackout, observe the panic at the store. Unless you have physical currency or tradable goods, you are destitute. The modern economy is a hallucination maintained by electricity. You must treat the first 60 minutes of a blackout as the golden hour. This is the critical window where your survival is determined. While the masses are fumbling for candles, you must execute a pre-planned sequence. Minute 0 to 5. Silence and assess. Do not turn on a light. Sit in the dark and listen to the acoustic bass line of your neighborhood. Isolate your house from the grid by throwing the main breaker to prevent a voltage spike from frying your electronics when power returns. Minute 5 to 15. Secure the perimeter. Engage blackout curtains. Ensure no photon escapes your windows. You must maintain the illusion that you are just as helpless as your neighbors. Inside, use only red light to preserve your biological night vision. Minute 15 to 60. Activate life support. Connect your critical loads, fridge, freezer, and fans, to your LiFePO4 battery bank. Verify your water storage immediately before pressure drops. Turn on your emergency radio to scan the frequencies. Information is the ammunition of the mind. Look at nations like Venezuela or South Africa. They live in a permanent state of rolling blackouts. The people who survive there are the ones who stopped waiting for the government to fix the turbines and built their own power plants. The West is not immune to this entropy. We are just further back in the queue. The big one could be a cyber attack, a physical assault on substations, or a Carrington event solar flare that fries the high-voltage transformers. These transformers take years to manufacture. In that scenario, the lights do not come back on for months. The rolling blackout is the warning shot. Are you listening? The grid is not merely a utility. It is the umbilical cord of the modern industrial state. It is the mechanism by which the system keeps you docile, dependent, and tracked. Every time you flip a switch, you reaffirm a contract of servitude. But that contract is void. The infrastructure is crumbling under the weight of entropy. The big one is not a remote possibility, it is a mathematical certainty. When the frequency finally destabilizes for the last time, the difference between the master and the victim will be defined by one thing: energy independence. Building a microgrid is an act of rebellion. When you harvest the sun's radiation and bank it in a lithium reservoir, you are seceding from the vulnerability of the herd. You are declaring that your life is not subject to the incompetence of a politician or the greed of a shareholder. You are decentralizing the power plant, the water treatment facility, and the communication network, bringing them inside your own walls. Complexity is fragile. Simplicity is robust. A man with a battery is infinitely more resilient than a city with a nuclear plant and no backup. Do not wait for the news anchor to tell you to panic. By then, it is too late. The big one will arrive in silence, looking exactly like the 4-hour blackout you ignored, until the 4th hour passes and the darkness becomes permanent. In that future, the world will be divided into 2 castes: those who wait in the dark, praying for a system that has abandoned them, and those who create their own light. You have the physics, you have the warning, the test has already begun. Will you be the one holding the candle, or the one controlling the switch?